Welcome back to Africa This Morning. We are now on Table Talk, and today we have an inspirational interview with Stephen Kigwa, an author, motivational speaker, and corporate trainer. You have a very interesting story that I know the viewers will be glad to hear. Welcome to Ebro Africa.
Thank you very much.
Let's start off with your story.
Yes.
Why have you gotten to where you've gotten to right now? To the point you're actually a motivational speaker. There must be a story behind you.
I think I would say many things, but I think one key thing for me was, it's when I was growing up, really. My father was a pastor. Yeah. And I never wanted to become a pastor, but I really enjoyed his sermons when he would tell people stories on what he was preaching about and all that. And I thought I needed to do something similar, not so much to address the spiritual matters in the lives of people, but to deal with the emotional and intellectual aspect of human being that enables us to thrive in life. And that's why I got into motivational speaking. Yes.
What did you see in humanity that led you to feel spirituality is not what you wanted to touch on, but you wanted to boost the mental and emotional and environmental aspects of a human being?
Two things. One was the fact that we tend to over-spiritualize matters so much so that everything we do and we are unable to do, we always say, God, God, God.
God knows why.
Yes, but the second point is I realize that most people really don't achieve in life, not because God is not on their side, but because there's something you have to do as an individual for you to be able to move forward. And that is really what I wanted to address. Yes.
Journey with us through your childhood. You shared with me an interesting story of how
I grew up in the countryside where, those days we were taught English in vernacular, and I went to one of those
English
schools.
in vernacular?
In vernacular, imagine. So by the time I was done with my 8-year course in primary school, I was not able to explain myself how to articulate anything in English. But I was, I believe, an intelligent boy. I was admitted to join a provincial school. And while there, in my first year, I remember this school had admitted boys from all over the country. Some of them had gone to boarding primary schools where they had been taught English in English. Now,
that's an interesting equation
right there. That was a predicament right there because I was not able to talk to anyone. And I remember I overheard some two boys say to me, they say to each other, they say, look at that boy at the corner there. He can't even make a friend. He's so much of a soba. And I felt so offended, but I couldn't say anything to them. But I say to myself, by the time I'm done with my 4-year course in this school, I will be the best speaker and the best orator. So what I did, I began a club in that school, and I said, boys, if you come from a village like me, you are welcome to enroll. And here were the rules. No one was allowed to speak in vernacular. If you're caught speaking in vernacular, the fine would be 1 bob. And those days, 1 bob was a lot of money because it was equivalent to a half loaf of bread. And bread was very important.
And it's very significant in high school.
I know that. It was very important. So by just getting hold of 2 guys speaking vernacular, you had a whole loaf. Now, here's what I used to do during break times. I used to go and associate with the boys who had come from the urban cities. Now, those days, if you said you came from Ooro, I mean, you belonged there in the society. So, but of course, I would speak to these boys and they would laugh at me because everything I said was wrong, grammatically, everything. But I didn't give up. I also never got any rest from the boys who had come from the village like me because they were telling me, why are you trying to pretend to be somebody that you are not? We know you. We know your mother, father, brother, sister. You're trying to speak in a language you hardly even able to explain yourself out. But I was determined. And I remember when I was in Form 3, we were preparing to go home for the April holiday. And I was given a chance to go in front of 702 boys to lead the entire school in morning prayers. I went in the front and I opened the Bible and I read a verse somewhere in the book of Proverbs. And after that, I decided to share with the rest of the students my insight concerning that verse. So I went on explaining for 10, 15 or so minutes. And after that, I went back to the queue. In our school, the principal, those days they were called headmasters, would allow the teachers to come forward and give their word of advice to the boys before they went home for the holiday. So the teacher who came forward was the teacher who was in charge of literature department. He came and he said, where's that boy who was leading us today in morning prayers? And I lifted up my head trembling because I thought
You've done something or said something wrong.
But to my surprise, he said 2 things that I will never forget that changed my thinking. He said, did you see how well he articulated his points? Did you see how he spoke with confidence? He said, next time when we resume, I would like you to come and see me because you are going to participate in public speaking. So when we resumed the following term, we had an internal competition in the school, and a boy who could not speak English in Form 1, in Form 3 second term, emerged top. I went to the zonal level, I was position 1. I went to the divisional level, I was position 1. I went to the district level, I was position 1. I went to the district level, position 1. I was defeated to position 2 at provincial level.
How did you feel at that point, the fact that you had made decisions that deliberately influenced, you know, your position in the school, socially? What did you feel when people were responding to you and you saw the impact of your plowing, if I may put it that way?
I would say a sense of fulfillment. I actually felt like I actualized something that was lying dormant within me. Today, when I give the same story, people tell me, are you the same boy who never knew how to speak English? And that tells me that each one of us has something in them that when it is harnessed and channeled in the right way, it can take them to far places. And that is why, really, this is one of the things that really motivated me to go into motivational speaking, because I discovered people have handles in life to overcome. And some people look at handles as limitations. But the fact that you have handles to overcome means you have to fight harder than most people, because you can go far when you do that.
The interesting thing for me is when you're hosting a motivational speaker, the stories are always good.
Yes.
The future looks bright. The middle right here is where people get lost.
Yes.
Jumping over the hurdles. Share with us what tools you're giving the public out there so that they're able to better understand that the hurdles are not the devil's opportunity to take hold of their life, but just things that they have to overcome, and how they need to just better manage their assets to be, more productive when it comes to their environment, whether at work, at home, or in society.
This is my view about life. Life is actually an adventure into unexplored territories.
An adventure into unexplored territories.
And the reason why it's an adventure is because it has got both good things and bad things. Unfortunately, especially motivational speakers, we sometimes tend to, and not just motivational speakers, anyway, generally human beings want to talk, especially when you become successful.
Yes.
You want to give the story of how you did it and how excellent you did it and what
how
you achieved.
Strong you were.
Yes, but we don't like giving the story of the days you spent struggling and crying and wondering whether you're gonna make it and all that. And I would sum it up in one way. One is the far you have come in life, you're there because of certain way of thinking. Your thinking has brought you that far, but the same thinking that has brought you that far has also produced with it some limitations and some hurdles that the same thinking cannot solve. So you require another level of thinking that will take you to another level to solve the problems that the current thinking that has brought you this far cannot solve.
How do we change our thinking then?
And that is why you have to make learning a habitual thing throughout life. You know, learning for me is an adaptive change of behavior resulting from past experience. If you're not changing, you're not learning. I think if you have to lead anything, whether it's people or to lead in your industry, in whatever it is that you do, you have to be a reader. I ask people questions like this. I ask people, how many books have you read for the last 1 week or 1 month? And sometimes I get surprised to realize that people have not even read any book for the last 6 months or so. And the same people, I ask them, and have you bought some new clothes? For sure they would have bought some clothes within. And for me, it's bad manners to have more clothes
than you have more
books.
brain capacity.
Yes. So you have to keep upgrading your thinking by reading, by interacting with people who have gone way ahead of you to find out how they overcame the same challenges that you overcame, that you are faced with. Yes.
When you're looking at the challenges still.
Yes.
And I like the fact that you've put it to the population that it's not an issue of you considering that the uncharted waters should be a straight and narrow, smooth path. When you're talking to people, how receptive are they when it comes to dealing with challenges? Because we don't like dealing with the dirt, the valleys, and the darkness. How receptive are they to recognizing that reality before they get to the greater vision?
Well, what I do, especially in my talks, is I am not the kind of guy who will try to put up a front for the camera, just telling people how nice my life has been. I actually paint in the minds of people exactly the struggles that I've gone through. And it is when people realize that you are a real person dealing with real issues that they become receptive to you. If you just tell people of what they can do to become successful, whether in career or in relationships or whatever it is they do, and you cannot show them, you cannot connect with them by showing them what you did that would connect
Got
with them.
you to where
Yes, and
your greatness.
the failures, which I don't like looking at as failures, but as outcomes. So it is these outcomes that are not good outcomes. You have to keep looking. You have to develop the attitude of keep looking for the formula that gives you success.
I think the
So
Thomas Edison theory is what people need to
Yes,
always
yes, to
remember.
keep
He had
experimenting.
to go through thousands of bulbs
Yes.
before he got one that actually worked.
Yes.
There's a book that I'm very interested in, that how to home in on your purpose.
Yes.
And one of the issues of homing in on your purpose is the fact that you have to go through challenges.
Yes.
And this is a book that is available for the public. Share with us, there's an interesting aspect of the book that I would want the public to know about, the fact that you have a specific number of questions you put forward to the population.
Well, Beryl, it wasn't that I had the questions in mind. God has graced me with the opportunity to have been able to travel around the country and around the globe. And every place I've been to, people ask me, how did you discover this is what you are born to do? And how do I discover myself what I was born to do? And I realized that is not a question that you can answer to somebody just by giving them one sentence or a paragraph. So what I did is I actually sat down, did a lot of research, talked to people who are doing what they were born to do, how they came to discover that is what they were born to do. And I came up with 86 questions that someone needs to ask themselves and answer authentically for them to discover really what they were born to do. Because each one of us has an assignment. There is something that, Beryl, you can do that no one can do the way you could do it. Only you can do it that way. Yes.
And when you're talking about 86, 86 is a pretty hang-on number. Somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Like I said, I didn't. It wasn't that I was actually looking for 86 questions. Not what I did. The book is divided into 3 categories. One is about self-reflection,
Yes.
and the other thing is about your environment, and then your career and the things that you aspire to be. So I divided the book into those 3 categories. So those questions vary in all those aspects. So it's not. It wasn't that I was coming up with 86 questions.
Yeah.
It's only that when I looked at all the questions that I had, when I counted them, there were 86 questions.
Interestingly,
Yes.
you have this as one of, I believe, 7 books.
Yes, yes, I have authored 7 books.
Share with us, what are some of the aspects that you'd want to highlight, even as you're homing in on our purpose?
Yes.
What are some of the bumps, the hurdles, the valleys that we need to be keen on that are featured in the other 7 books?
Well, one of the key things I've really, and actually what I've done in my books is that it's like, if you look at my books, the way I've done them, it's like a series. You know, you have to move from this stage to this stage. The first book I did, I remember, I called it Fruitful and Quality Life. And what I had in mind was, I was looking at the same people that my father was pastoring. They were Christian and Bible-believing and all that, but when I looked at their lives, there was nothing really that reflected that they had the joy and, you know, the fruitfulness and all that. So I sat down, did my research, and discovered exactly what was lacking in their lives, and I have shared it in my book called Fruitful and Quality Life. If you want your life to be fruitful and quality, then I have given the recipe for that. That is the first book I did. It's actually more of a spiritual book than intellectual or anything else.
In a sense, you're trying to boost up on the capacity of spirituality
Exactly.
by giving them tools that they can practically work on
Exactly.
every day to
Yes.
change and
Yes.
realize the vision of spirituality.
That's correct.
Share with us, what has that allowed you to visualize in the society? Because when you see spirituality and motivational speaking merging, there's power in that. Share with us some of the feedback that you've received.
You know, we are, first of all, spiritual beings before we are physical beings. Actually, we are spiritual beings having a human experience,
Yeah.
other than, you know, being human beings having a spiritual experience. Now,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to dissociate the spiritual aspect of human being to the emotional being, to the emotional face or facet of the human being.
Yeah.
And you realize that everything that we do as human beings, we do it as a result of an emotion. Everything that you do, including what we are doing right now, including your career and all that, you do it because there is an emotion behind it. And emotions are the engine of our souls. They are the ones that drive us to want to achieve, to want to run away from something, to want to achieve something. So you have to, what I've done in my book is to help people be able to channel their emotions, be able to discipline their thinking, be able to cultivate the required elements in their lives to be able to move from where they are to where they want to be. And basically my message, all my books, cut across all my books, is basically on that, how to become what you are meant to be and how to overcome the hurdles and the limitations that you may have in life. Yes.
Curtailing the power and the force that emotions bring to life is
Yes.
quite a challenge.
Yes.
What are some of the ways one needs to, for example, dealing with depression, not giving up, reeling in over enthusiasm when it comes to work and then not doing anything after that? What are some of the skills or tools that you've given the public who are dealing with such challenges to be able to maximize on opportunities without failing to realize their goals?
There are many, but I would just want to pick on one, which is actually an emotional law. Like I said, everything we do is as a result of emotion. However, we cannot control our emotions directly. We control our emotions through our actions. They are interrelated.
Yeah.
Either emotions always follow actions or actions always follow emotions. They are interrelated. Now, there is a very interesting law in the emotional aspect of a human being that enables someone to thrive. And like I said, you can't control emotions directly. You control it with your actions. And these actions are actually the result of words. And words are actually the software that drives your thinking, your mind. So it all boils back to your thinking habits.
Basically, you can, whatever you proclaim is actually whatever you're projecting in your mind.
Yes.
And if you proclaim everything that's negative, that is what you're creating in your society.
Exactly.
There's an interesting book that you've come up with that touches on the actions that are around us.
Yes.
You've shared with me an issue that you're still putting together, but maybe if you have the liberty, you can share with us the book that you're coming up with right now, touching on road carnage. Totally different subject to what you're touching on in the motivational speaking, but it's related to our actions in life.
Right, and what I did this year, I actually started last year. There was a lot of talks all over the media and also in the general public about what was happening on our roads. So many deaths on the road through careless driving and all that. And as a motivational speaker and as an author, I thought to myself, how can I also contribute into the society, into this debate and the conversation? And I came up with a book because I wanted to approach the same thing that the government or the people or the public were trying to attack from a literature perspective.
Yeah.
And I did a book called Kiss of Death. And Kiss of Death basically is a literature book. But what I have done in that book is I have exposed the role there is in the public, general public, in everybody, all the stakeholders, the government, the police service, and everyone, in motorists, passengers, and all that. That's what I've done in that book. And what I've just done, the theme in that book is trying to tell the society at large. Because what is lacking is two things. One, little courtesy on the road. And second, duty of care. People don't have any little courtesy, no duty of care. You don't get bothered about the person who is driving ahead of you or driving behind you and all that. And this is basically what I'm trying to address.
When you're dealing with such an issue, the mind of the public is a very interesting field to plow in that moment.
Yes.
What would you hope they would get from the book that would change their perspective when it comes to being more courteous and to be more, to have a better investment when it comes to duty of care?
What I have done in that book is I've actually outlined several accidents that have happened in this country. It's actually based on real life stories of things that have actually happened on our roads. And I've just tried to show them exactly what happens. You know, accident deaths are very painful because can you imagine losing someone who was not even sick? They were just going to work. They were traveling. They were not sick. And a child is left without a father, a wife is left without a husband, children are left without parents and all that. So that's basically what I'm trying to show to the public. How do we curb this? Just by little things, some simple things to avoid. And these are things I've gathered while I've been driving around the country for over 10 years.
Self-worth is an aspect that I hope you would be able to highlight in the book, because the way you behave within yourself is how you will reflect outwards.
Yes.
Give us a closing word that the population would be able to carry them even as we close the interview, for them to be able to know that regardless of where they're at, the light at the end of the tunnel is actually realistic. They could get there if they focus.
And this boils back to what I call self-confidence. And the level of your confidence about your gifts, your talent, about who you are, what you're born to do, what you can achieve, what you can have, what you can do, where you could be, where you can go, is It's all within you. Self-confidence actually is the hinge upon which turns the doors of individual achievement at both personal life and professional
That was
life.
almost a tweetable quote, which I failed to get, and I'll watch this to ensure that I'm able to upload that.
Yes. I said self-confidence is the hinge upon which turns the doors of individual achievement
Yeah.
at both your personal life and professional life.
That's powerful.
The moment self-confidence comes from your self-concept, self-respect, self-esteem, and self-respect is nothing more than nothing less than how much you respect yourself.
Yeah.
And the respect you give yourself is the respect that other people give you. People see you exactly the way you see yourself. People respect you the way you respect yourself. Yes.
That would be a beautiful journey for us to be, to be able to walk with you on,
Yes.
to ensure that the population actually has a better awakening and a better consciousness, one for self and also for their neighbor.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure hosting you. Of course, we'll be having you several times because we need to awaken the consciousness within ourselves as well.
Thank you very much.
It was a
Beryl.
pleasure.
Thank you.
I hope you've been inspired with our interview with motivational speaker, author, and institutional leadership trainer. Thank you so much for joining us. I've been your host, Beryl Ooro. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.